Hi, I'm BECMI Berserker and welcome back to my channel. A mechanic that often takes some adjusting to by players trying BECMI or other old school editions of Dungeons & Dragons for the first time is the saving throw. Not for the fact that the mechanic exists, it's been a stalwart ever since the game's early days, only disappearing for a short time in 4th edition before making a comeback in 5th. No, it's because of how it's framed, and how different it seems to modern representations of the mechanic. It's sometimes difficult for older players like myself to put into perspective how long ago it's been since the original saving throw mechanic was put aside by Wizards of the Coast when designing the 3rd edition, which was released way back in 2000. I say way back because, unbelievably, that's 23 years ago. But go 23 years earlier than 2000, and it's 1977, and TSR is about to release the 1st edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So 23 years is significant. It's a young life and a college education. So it's no wonder that younger players might view the original saving throw mechanic as a bit archaic, and weird, and, dare I say it, quaint. So I'm here to take us through the saving throw mechanic as presented in BECMI, to demonstrate how it works, how characters' saving throws improve, how this translates when it comes to monster saving throws, and finally some of my own thoughts on the mechanic versus later editions. Okay, so what is a saving throw? Well, the Rules Cyclopedia states, a saving throw represents your character's attempt to avoid the effects of some sort of unusual attack. Poison, magical spells, the flaming breath of a dragon, and so forth. A successful saving throw means that the character either sustains a reduced amount of damage, or suffers no harmful effect at all, depending on the type of attack. Okay, so pretty standard stuff if you're familiar with the game of Dungeons & Dragons. However, the framing of this mechanic demonstrates this quite literally, as you can see here. In BECMI and all editions of Dungeons & Dragons that came before 2000, each character had what was referred to as 5 saving throws, each with a score already allocated. There was no such thing as a difficulty class, only these scores. The saving throws were framed as follows. Death ray or poison, made to avoid potential instant death or effects from poison, which could also mean instant death. This saving throw is most commonly associated with the phrase save or die. Magic wands, what it says on the tin really, to avoid an attack or spell conducted by a wand. This saving throw was also sometimes used when a character needed to physically avoid things in lieu of a dexterity check. Paralysis or turn to stone, made to avoid becoming paralysed, for example from a ghoul's attack, or when avoiding petrification from an attack that could turn your character to stone. Dragon breath, perhaps the most evocative saving throw description, a roll to avoid the worst effects of not only dragon's breath, but all breath weapons. And rod, staff or spell, another obvious description. This is rolled when facing an attack from any of these sources. What's interesting to note is that spells from wands have their own saving throw. I'm not entirely sure why this was the case, but if there are any minds greater than mine out there able to let us know, I think that would be interesting. Also interesting to note is that this saving throw was used for all spells unless otherwise stated, whether it was a charm, fireball, or illusion. It was a spell, so you saved versus spells. So how did you know what your saving throw scores were? And how did the mechanic work? Well, your saving throw scores were inextricably linked to your class. In each description, we are given a list of saving throw scores, and also shown how these improve as a character advances in level. The lower the saving throw score, the better. So for instance, a level 1 fighter would record their saving throws on their character sheet, as shown here. However, when they advance to 4th level, these scores improve, and in the case of the fighter class, their saving throw scores improve every 3 levels. If we take a look at the saving throws of the magic user, we can see that their improvements happen at a slower pace, every 5 levels. For clerics and thieves, it's every 4 levels. Clearly the saving throw mechanic was used as a way of balancing the classes, and nowhere is this seen clearer than when looking at the saving throws of the dwarf and halfling. Comparing these to the first level human classes, it is obvious how resistant dwarves and halflings are to these types of attacks. I believe the only reason the elven saving throws stayed higher is due to this class being already quite powerful. That said, elven saving throws do improve dramatically every 3 levels. So I've shown you all these numbers reducing, and I'm calling them improvements. So let's address the mechanics of the saving throw, and the numbers should make more sense to you. To succeed a saving throw, a player must roll a d20 and achieve a result equal to or above the relevant saving throw score. So returning to our first level fighter, who has haplessly downed a bottle of poison labelled Potion of Healing, the Dungeon Master lets the player know that his character begins convulsing due to the poison's effects, and that a saving throw versus poison is required. Checking their saving throw score, the player can see that they must roll a 12 or higher to avoid the poison's effect. The player rolls a 16. Success! The Dungeon Master describes the character as convulsing, and then vomiting up the poison quickly, ruining his elven companion's new shoes and losing all dignity in the process, and all trust in food labels. Okay, so can saving throws be adjusted? Well, the rules in the original basic set did state that a character's wisdom score may adjust the roll for a saving throw versus spells, but that was all, just versus spells. However, there is a variant rule in the rules cyclopedia that was used by nearly every BECMI playing group I came across since its release in 1991, which offered a much more comprehensive system of adjustments to saving throws, which I have shown here. This enabled the saving throw mechanic to be much more linked to all of a character's ability scores, therefore making saving throws a bit more individualised. So returning once more to our fighters' save versus poison, their roll of 16 would get a +2 adjustment due to their constitution score, meaning an adjusted score of 18. Was it ever in doubt? Okay, so we've covered saving throws for character classes, but what about for monsters? Well, in BECMI and other old school D&D editions, monsters don't actually have saving throw scores specific to them as such. Instead, in the stat block of each monster, there is a reference called Saves As, and next to this will be a reference to a class and level. What this means is that the monster in question has the same saving throws as the character referred to. So in this example, an orc saves as F1, so a first level fighter. In this other example, a greater Efreet saves as a 36th level magic user. Okay, so I've demonstrated the saving throw mechanic in BECMI for both characters and monsters. So what are my thoughts when comparing this to the latest 5th edition? Well, the greatest criticism of the old school method was that there were times when in-game circumstances didn't have a natural fit to one of the 5 saving throws. The example I gave earlier when describing magic wands being used as an avoidance saving throw is a case in point. There are examples of this usage in the introductory Castle Mistamere adventure contained in the 1983 red box, such as having to save versus wands to avoid falling debris. This seems out of step with the evocative image of magic wands, although I can conceive how one might think it appropriate. That is, diving out of the way of a wand's effect might be similar to diving out of the way of another hazard. Added to the variant rule that links dexterity adjustments to the magic wand's saving throw, then maybe it does kind of make sense. But you can see how it could also be disjointing and potentially feel like the hand-waving of an issue with the presentation of the mechanic. Groups did begin evolving their games to deal with this by incorporating ability checks, where a direct correlation with a saving throw wasn't obvious, and this would mean a player being required to roll equal to or under their character's ability score. This seems sensible enough, except that the probability of passing this test never improved as a character went up in levels, whereas a character's saving throw score did improve. So perhaps there's a case to be had for how 5th edition does it, with saving throws actually being ability checks, with certain classes being better at some saves than others, and the proficiency score improving the chances of a save as a character levels. Making a constitution save versus poison kind of makes sense. Making a wisdom save versus an enchantment also kind of makes sense. But in my humble opinion, in BECMI I think this already happens with the use of the variant rules linking ability scores to saving throws. So if a DM really was stuck on which saving throw to use, they could elect the one linking to the ability score that needs testing. It might be called something abstract, but the intention is the same. Also, I think 5th edition wanders into the same territory as old school found itself in quite often anyway, as DMs consider situations their parties are in and decide on the spot the kind of saving throws that are required, as it's not always obvious. I think this is a skill of a good DM anyway, to be thrown a curveball, decide on how to deal with it, and form a resolution that makes sense to your players. And that's the crux of the matter. As long as the players are happy and all agree on the abstraction and the resolution, then what does it matter? However, in my opinion, you only have to look at these saving throws to know which list evokes feelings of dark dangers and strange magics. I know which list screams Dungeons & Dragons to me, but hey, I'm not 23. Thank you so much for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed this run through of saving throws in the BECMI game. Please consider liking this video and also subscribing if I've earned your future attention. Otherwise, I'm BECMI Berserker. Keep making your saving throws, and I hope to see you back here soon.